Jeremiah, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you, my friend.
It is my pleasure. It has been a long time. So, what has been since that we haven't talked each other? I am very curious. And for the audience, should you tell about your background, what you are doing? So, let's start from this basic question.
Yes, I think the last time we saw each other, we were on a boat on the river in your hometown, enjoying that. It was beautiful. So yes, yeah. So my name's Jeremiah Gardner. I've done a lot of different things, but I really came out of the startup world, and experienced crushing failure and defeat and everything in between that and success, right? And out of that came a book, which we met over, that I wrote called The Lean Brand, which was applying lean startup into how we develop and build an audience as a startup. And what's interesting is at that period of time, there was a lot of transformation happening around mindsets, where as we taught startups how to behave like big companies for a very long time, in that period of time, big companies are wanting to behave more like a startup. So that led to some consulting and led to a practice that I was a part of there, and got to travel the world and really with some interesting folks build some very interesting things around lean innovation and product management and new product development in very large global corporations, which was interesting. And from there, it led me into working in the one place that Steve Blank back in the day said, or actually the two places he said you can't use these concepts in, are aeronautical engineering and healthcare and health services. So of course, when the opportunity came up to join a major global pharmaceutical company and see if we could pull it off on the healthcare side, I couldn't turn it down. So I spent a lot of time doing that, figuring out how to apply these principles and build early stage product funnels and product development inside of healthcare. And now I'm coming out of that. Don't know what's next, but excited to be on the podcast and to chat with you today.
Steve Blank was not right expecting, I mean, think that healthcare may be also implementing the lean startup methodologies. Then what do you how did you implement the lean mindset? And additionally, companies are acting like startups. Tell me about that.
So I think there's twofold to that question. One is, they're large companies are realizing they need to create new products and services, right? And there's this gap. What we're really talking about is there's kind of this known curve that over time, what we know and the products that we have in market today, is a diminishing return to that curve. It's curving downward, whatever time period you want to put on that, 2 to 4 years, 5 years, whatever that might be. And then we have objectives in large organizations, things that we want to meet. And the difference between those objectives that we have in long term when it comes to growth and it comes to where we want to be in the market, and that known curve trending down of the things that we have in the market and we know today, that represents our unknown, what we don't know today, right? That's the gap. That's the growth gap. And so in order to manage that, you can't simply just apply the operating principles that you're using on the known side and the known products. You actually have to have new methodologies, new mindsets, new organizations even around searching in that unknown. And so that's what a lot of organizations are trying to figure out, is how do we bring new products and services to market in that unknown space to achieve our objectives while not risking the core of our business, the known side. And I think that's a lot of what I've been a part of is figuring out how to do that at a very large scale, and how to do that at a global level, which is really interesting work. It's fun and challenging. Now, your question about healthcare, it can be done. We did it. We built both acceleration models and incubator models inside of large healthcare, pharmaceutical, and different types of services within that. It's extremely challenging, and it's extremely challenging for lots of reasons, which we could spend another 20 hours talking about all those reasons. But the work in all of this stuff is never taking the principles and methodologies and structures and things that you have and just implementing them somewhere else. The work in all this is actually figuring out how those structures, methodologies, models, so on and so forth, adapt to the culture and the environment of that organization. And that's why I always say there's no such thing as an expert in building product operating models or in building innovation practices, because every time I've done it, it's brand new because the culture is different, the environment's different, so on and so forth.
In your last blog post about unveiling the progress of metrics for pre-market initiatives, you introduced the concept of progress metrics as a way of measure pre-market innovation portfolios. What is innovation portfolios? Please define. And what inspired you to develop this approach, and how does it differ from the traditional performance metrics?
Yeah, that's a great question. Innovation portfolio really is, a grouping of projects or concepts or products. Everyone seems to have a fancy name for those things, but whatever you call them, initiatives in your organization, or in your case, in a fund, for example, it's that group of companies that you would call that. Inside of a large organization, we call them a group of concepts or initiatives or projects or products that are in that exploration phase that I described a minute ago. We're trying to progressively de-risk those concepts or those products in order to bring them to market. So that's our innovation portfolio. It's not the core business. It's not in the market running as part of our core P&L, but it is stuff that we're exploring. And we know, based on statistics, the likelihood of success, throughput maybe 10, 15, 20% if we're lucky. So there's a lot in our portfolio that we're managing that we're gaining insights from, but may not eventually become a market success. And so progress metrics were born out of how do you manage an innovation portfolio that is not yet in market, meaning that we can't measure traditional things like revenue or customer acquisition or customer lifetime value or retention. All these sorts of metrics can't be measured yet because we actually haven't brought a solution to market. Yet we still have a large portfolio of teams that are exploring these opportunities and trying to figure out a business model in order to get to a place where we can pilot or micro-pilot that product. And so, what I saw and what I experienced was there was a lot of decision-making on that early stage product development based on who had the prettiest slides, who spoke the best, the political connections between folks. The resources were flowing on some of those types of things. It was very hard to get to an objective measurement of the progress of an early stage team. And so progress metrics were born out of a pain point of that and a need to figure out how to be more objective in our portfolio management. And that's where I tried to create a way that we could be, it's not 100% objective because we still are having an opinion as a human being, but it's much more objective in the sense that we have a way to score and evaluate those early stage concepts that measures the progress they're making towards being market ready. So that's where they were born, and that's what purpose they really serve.
How do you strike the balance between accelerating time to market or mitigating the risks, evidence-based decision-making for innovation initiatives inside of the corporations?
Now that's a wonderful question, and it's the $1 million question, right? On one end, you have a cycle time or speed that you want to get to market. So it's time to market, and you want to always be trying to trend towards getting to market faster, right? It's the first mover advantage that some people talk about, but it's also the fact that it's a very competitive landscape and people can copy things very easily. And there's Me Too products that come out, weeks after the initial launch of a brand new product. So the speed to market's very important in one hand. On the other hand, there's a lot of risk in the unknown. There's a lot of things that we need to actually address. What does the customer need? What's the actual pain points that we're solving? What is the small early adopter segment we want to address? What is the value proposition that will actually meet that need for that segment? What does a solution look like and that would actually fulfill the value proposition? So there's a lot of unknown things that we don't know, and we need to be able to mitigate that risk. And I don't use the word eliminate because I think eliminating risk is almost impossible. There's always risk, but you can mitigate it to a level that you feel confident in progressing the resource investments, just like you're doing in a fund. What is going to give you the feedback that says it's worth making another investment in that team or in that project? And so with that comes balancing those two ends of the spectrum. If you move too fast, then likely, and you prioritize only speed to market, you're probably going to carry a lot of risk underneath the carpet, sweep it under the carpet. And when you get to market, all of that's going to be exposed, right? And it's going to be a really tough launch and probably a failure in the product side. If you only look at and prioritize the mitigation of risk, then you're probably going to move way too slow because there's always some sort of inherent risk that exists in this unknown space, which means you'll be late to market or in some cases never actually get to market. And the market share will dissipate before you're ready to actually bring it to market. So the balancing of those two things is, I think, the practices that get built around product operating models in these early stage developments. How do we manage those two things? How do we measure those two things and make sure that we have an adequate speed to market that isn't ignoring the level of confidence we need to have in the mitigation of risk?
The progress metrics provide a single source of truth, measuring the pre-market portfolio progression. Can you explain more about how this works in practice? I mean, and what is the benefit it provides?
Yeah. So my next post in this series will go into the nitty gritty that some of people like you want to get into. How do you actually do this? Well, the first foundation is you have to have a unified view of what a product is, right? Or a startup, if you're in a fund or something like that, initiative, concept, all those words. But what is it? What can I look at and see that we can all agree that, yes, that's what it is? And for us, what that came down to was understanding the business model, and an adaptation of that represents what we're building. That's the company, right? That's the organization. That's what we're building. So in that business model, there are 9 components that exist. And so can we objectively measure the progress of those 9 components and aggregate a single source or a single truth metric? So the mechanics are really simple, it sounds, but very hard to pull off in some ways, in the sense that what you're doing is you're taking a business model view of a project, of a startup, of a concept, and you're asking the organization, based on the evidence that we've generated and that we share per concept, what is the confidence level we have in each one of these 9 boxes of the business model? Then we're taking all of that, weighting it, and we're adding some qualitative stuff. What about the team, who they are, their experience, right? The game plan they have to chase this down, so on and so forth. And when you put all of that together and you weight it out in the way that you need to do, it produces a single score that we call the progress metric that says, based on the evidence that's presented, based on the team that is presenting that, based on what we know about this concept or this product or this startup team or this product, we have this level of confidence in this coming to market and being successful, right? In the progress that they're making in mitigating that risk and the speed at which they're doing that. So it sounds super simple, and in theory it really is. It's not, it's not a massive back-end, algorithm that needs to be run. But in practice, understanding confidence, understanding how we aggregate and where we weight and where we don't, and understanding ultimately the progressive nature of product development. When you start from zero, there's a sequencing that you need to follow, or most, I should say, products should follow, in order to really progress at speed, mitigate risk while keeping in mind speed to market.
Do you think that the series of this blog will be converting their book?
I hope not. Who knows? I always describe writing a book as going in a cave for a year and sitting in with your own thoughts, rolling around in your brain for too long. It's gotten a lot easier from what I understand now. There's a lot more tools that are available, but I'm a little old school that if I'm going to put my name on the cover, I want to make sure I wrote it. And so I don't know if Progress Metrics will be a book. What I hope they become is, in the series that I've been writing about, is just useful to others. It's something that we pioneered because we needed to. It's something I haven't seen a lot of success in terms of trying to be more objective in our pre-market evaluations. So if they're useful, great. And if people want to chat with me about how they can apply them and utilize them in their organization, then great too.
You told that on your 6-year journey establishing the innovation practice in the health industry, What were some of the most surprising learnings or unexpected challenges you encountered along the way?
Oh, Burak, you want this podcast to go for like another 4 hours. Oh man, I think it's not surprising, but it's an affirmation of something that I've been on this journey of learning for the last 10 years. When it comes to innovation and innovation management, so whether you're managing a fund or an accelerator, an incubator that's focused on early stage startups or Series A startups, or you're inside of a large organization and you're responsible for the innovation practice, whether that be a large practice with hundreds of teams or a smaller practice where you've got a couple teams. The reality of innovation is the pursuit of creating new value, right? And that's creating that new value, delivering that value. And when you start to talk about managing that, because there's so much unknown, it's really a hearts and minds game. And within healthcare, I learned or was affirmed that that's the case. It's really about behaving differently and helping people to behave differently, and also helping people be uncomfortable in their discomfort. I always kind of made the joke that, like, if you want a well-paved path with signs and traffic lights and all of those sorts of things, places to stop to eat along the way, innovation is probably not for you. We're out in the wilderness with backpacks on, no signs, and maybe we have a compass, and that's where we have to be okay in the exploration of things. And so it's not for everybody. And for those it is for, it's less about, the structure and the exact methodology. And it's much more about the behavior. And that's the leadership comes down to, can I put people in the right position at the right time with the right things they need to manage that uncertainty right now? That's it. And so it's hearts and minds. And so that was an affirmation inside of healthcare. Yes, the people that create the drugs that you take are human beings, if you were curious, and have feelings and all of those things. We're not to an AI formulary yet, but and those hearts and minds matter. And then I think the second lesson I took away from that is that the principles and methodologies and things are some of them are evergreen. For example, customer empathy, going to the customer, absolutely evergreen principle. We need to be able to learn directly from them. Challenging your assumptions and running experiments, absolutely evergreen, needs to be there as a principle. The application of those things in something like healthcare is challenging, can be challenging. You can't walk into a Starbucks and say, oh, you look like you have diabetes. Let's have a conversation. I'm a startup founder doing X, Y, and Z inside. No, I mean, you can't. There are lots of regulations just in the interaction between a healthcare company and their customers. And on top of that, you have the complexity that it's not just the patient. The system, for example, in the United States is it's the patient, it's the healthcare provider, it's the insurer, and it's the regulator. All of those things are important in terms of the value that you're going to bring to market. And oftentimes the need and value proposition, pain points, so on and so forth, are very different between those four groups of people. And so although the principles evergreen go to the customer, the challenge is, well, how? How do we get there? How do we do this within compliance? How do we generate the right learnings with the right people at the right time? So the balancing of those two things in environments that are highly complex, like drug manufacturing, for example, there's some rocket science in figuring out how to apply the principles, but the principles still apply.
You have built the incubation and accelerator inside of the large corporation, as health corporation. It's an impressive feat and impressive progress. So you will be probably giving advice nowadays. What advice would you offer other entrepreneurs looking at the similar transformational initiatives in complex industries and organizations?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I guess my advice, I don't know if I'm qualified yet to give advice in this because it's different every time, right? But I think is one, to understand the environment deeply. We thought about, and in the teams that I led, I used this paradigm that I think was really helpful, which is we called it program as a product. We said, look, we're building an innovation program. Yes, that's true at this global scale, but we're going to treat it like a product. So that means we have customers and we have needs that we need to define. We have a value proposition. We have channels to deliver that through, and we have a solution. And so we use the same way that we would measure an early stage product on our program. What are the knowns? What are the unknowns? How do we run experiments to learn? And so a lot of this comes down to truly deeply understanding the need in the organization for what you're doing as an entrepreneur. Who has the need? What are the pain points associated with that? What are the segments that might exist within your organization that you're trying to address? And then being able to bring something to market, bring something to the organization, which is your market as an entrepreneur, that you're able to look at as possibly an MVP that you can learn from and iterate from. And then make those iterations based on the environment, based on the feedback, based on whether or not it's meeting those needs. That's program as a product. And it's a principle that we really carried through and tried to learn from. The challenge for an entrepreneur is, one, there's a pressure to launch at scale. So if you're a chief innovation officer out there right now, likely you're hearing this and going, yeah, but I have to deliver it to the entire organization. And it's true. It's true. In its final format, that's what it needs to do. It's transforming the organization, the way we bring products to services market. But the learning vehicles can be much smaller, and the timelines can be much smaller as well than the larger picture of what you need to deliver on. And so we were very careful about trying not to launch too big or grow too fast, and keep things somewhat exclusive in order for us to still learn about the critical assumptions. As we started to mitigate those risks, those critical assumptions, we could scale. So we went from 10 teams to 15 to 20 to eventually 40 teams. And that was a purposeful scaling. And it does create some tension because there are teams that are in the cohort and there are teams that are not. But at the same time, that tension is okay as long as you're communicating well, because you need to be able to learn very quickly and apply those learnings in a rapid iteration cycle.
So before the recording button that I pushed to record, we were talking about coaches, especially training the innovation coaches. And I think this enhanced the frontline capabilities of, and it is a key part of your work probably in your earlier experience. So what skills and mindset did you focus on developing, and how did they contribute to the success of this practice?
Yeah, it's a great question. A product operating model should never just be a deck, right? that has a nice 50-page deck that shows you exactly what to do as you do it. No, the operating model is a living, breathing thing that we are applying into this really complex, unknown environment. So within that, we have a view of the progression of a product, right? We have a view of the metrics we would measure using progress metrics and performance metrics, these sorts of things. We have a view of maybe the way a team would form. What is the right cross-capable team that we need to have? So on and so forth, right? Some of these things exist within any type of operating model that we're going to build. But beyond that, there are support mechanisms that actually activate that operating model. One of them being leadership. One of them being the ability for leaders to lead in a different way inside an organization. One of them being properly cadenced progress reports. In other words, opportunities for us to raise progress and raise blockers and asks. One of them being dedication of teams, so on and so forth. One of the largest ones we've learned about is the one that you asked about, was the impact that a dedicated coach to a team can have. So what is the role of a coach? The role of a coach is not to come in and do the work or to manage the team in terms of making sure they're hitting their objectives in the right way and so on and so forth. That's what we have product owners for. That's what we have solution development managers for. The coach's role really comes in and looking at the behavior of the team, or in other words, the dynamic performance of the team. Where can they make improvements to be faster? Where are there capability gaps that we could possibly close based on a workshop or a certain technique or a particular tool that we can bring into bear? How do we make the team more effective and develop faster and ultimately get to high performance? So coach is that third eye, right? Is the objective view. They have no skin in the game in terms of the project being on time, on objective, but they have all the skin in the game in terms of the team performing well as a team. And so to do that, it takes training. To be a good coach, it's not something that you're just born with. It's a skill that you can learn. And when we look at coaching and we looked at the importance of that, it led us to this building an entire coaching practice, the coaching training practice and coaching support practice. And so this was in every organization I've been a part of. We've been able to do this. And that's now leveled up to what we now call, or what I now call, coaching meta skills. And I'm thinking about a masterclass. So if I do it, I'll come back to you. We can do a podcast about it. But essentially, what meta skills are, when you look at coaching and you separate it first and foremost between the IQ of coaching, in other words, the intelligence side, these are things we can learn in a book. For example, Burak, I hear you're a great basketball player. Burak, as a basketball coach, right, would be the IQ. I got to know the X's and O's. I got to know the game, the rules of the game, so the strategies of the game, so on and so forth. It's no different than if I'm a baseball coach or I'm an innovation coach. Hey, I need to know the IQ. I need to know an innovation process and the right tools to use and the methodologies to put in place and so on and so forth. That's the IQ side of coaching. The EQ side of coaching are the dynamic skills. These are what some call the soft skills or the people leader skills that need to develop. And those are true whether you're Burak as the basketball coach, me as innovation coach, and another person as a baseball coach. They're the same. The dynamic skills remain the same. And the three of them are: one is self-awareness. Do I understand what I'm bringing into the room, who I am, the lenses I view things through, so on and so forth? It's a meta skill. To be self-aware takes a lot of other skills, right, to be in there. But the bigger bucket is self-awareness. The second meta skill is the ability to observe. Can I objectively observe what's happening, be able to diagnose what's occurring or what I think is occurring, and confirm that diagnosis, test to confirm, yes or no? And that's a meta skill. It's a skill we need to learn: how to observe people, how to observe teams, actions, work, how to observe work, so on and so forth. And the third skill is the ability to intervene. So do I have a backpack full of skills and tactics that I can use to then intervene and solve that problem that I identified through the observation? And so those three meta skills are in a full-on curriculum that's been built around in terms of how do we develop that in a building block style, and how do we enable then coaches to go into a room and be successful in helping others perform well. And what's interesting is these meta skills, what we've learned, is stretch way beyond the role of a coach. So these are people leaders, these are mentors, these are executives, all sorts of folks are trying to utilize these meta skills that are coming from kind of the coaching ethos. And so that's been a challenge for us in saying, okay, well, do we do this next or not? It's like, well, who's the target market? Well, man, it's all over the place. And we know that's not the answer. So, but I would encourage people that the dynamic skills in business are really, really important. And they're enablers to other things like product operating models, like innovation inside an organization. And so don't pass them up. It's the hearts and minds game, and it takes skill, and you can build those skills.
As you look ahead of your next horizon of your career journey, what are you most excited to explore or tackle next?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm in it right now. I'm not quite sure what's next, which is good. It's good to feel that discomfort. It's also, wake up in the middle of the night, panic, what's going to happen? How are you going to pay the bills? So it's a good tension right now. I mean, I think for me, I've been able to come up with the attributes of what I want to do next. I don't know what that's going to be. One attribute is I want to build and not maintain. I want to continue to build. I don't want to go back into maintaining something that's already built. I'm a builder. That's what I'm good at. I'm comfortable with that blinking white cursor on the screen and having to create. So I want to create. I'm not as good at, for me personally, in taking something that's already built and making it a little bit better. There are people that are very skilled at that, and I'm so thankful for them, but that's not me. I'm a builder, and that's what I want to do. So build, not maintain. The second attribute I've had so far has been I want to do it together, not alone. So, sometimes I felt like the lone practitioner, the lone man in the arena in a large organization trying to transform it. And I know whatever's next, I want to do with a smart group of people around me. I don't want to build a solo practice and these sorts of things. I would love to join something that's already happening and learn from each other and do it together. And that's important. And oddly, the third attribute I've had them written down here in my journal, has been to invest and be invested in. That means something different for you. But what I mean by that is I really want to sink my teeth into something, whatever's next, and invest in it. But at the same time, I want to feel invested in. I want to feel that return, that balance. And so those are the attributes. And so that might mean a return to, consulting, might mean a return to organization. It might mean building my own thing. The one that gets me most excited, I think we're talking about before the call, I don't know how, I don't have the connections in there, but I just always have had an affinity for the Disney Imagineering group. So if you're out there listening and you have connections, I want them. I would love a warm introduction, because that would be so interesting to bring a coaching practice inside of that, or early stage funnel inside of that. But Disney Imagineering is probably my what do they call that? Your reaching star, or the one that's farthest away that I'd love to have happen, but I have no idea how to make it happen. But I don't know. I'll keep you apprised of what happens and where I go next.
What is the story of that T-shirt?
Is this video? Will people know? So if you're listening to this in audio, my T-shirt is UTD. It says Unified Team Diving, and it's the logo with a scuba diver that has a what's called a DPV, diver propulsion vehicle, on it. Yeah. So since we last chatted, I also on my personal life went deep down, pun intended, deep down into the scuba diving world. I've always loved the water. I've always loved being around the water. I always knew that if I went scuba diving, I was going to love it. And it all worked out for me to go years ago and try it. And of course, I loved it and got my certification, and that's grown. And it's so funny, because diving in a lot of ways to me is the same thing as innovation. It's exploring the unknown. It's being in a place we shouldn't be. We have to have some equipment and some training and some skills in order to mitigate the risk of dying under the water, just like we have to have inside of the risk of mitigating going to market and failing. So they're very similar exploration practices to me. And I just went down the path so deeply into this, where I fell in love with the cave environment, diving in caves. And so I've become obsessed a little bit with exploring cave systems and understanding those and how they form, and lots of things. And so all of that led me to an agency called UTD, and this T-shirt, Unified Team Diving, that I found to be the best training agency that I'd come across. And so I was trained up by them, and over time, and the opportunity came up very organically, just kind of out of the blue, where they approached me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to join the executive team as a co-owner of the company or not?" And I said, wow, like that was totally unexpected, not in my plans. And so I said yes, because I always will say yes to things that I think are interesting. And so now I'm part owner, a minority owner, but not the only owner, part owner of Unified Team Diving. And we're trying to build and continue to build a training agency that just thinks differently and acts differently, and build some of the best thinking divers that we can have out there. And because diving is such a gear intensive sport sometimes, that we lose the biggest tool we bring in the water is our brain. And that's what UTD is really trying to bring back is those thinking divers. So that's what the T-shirt is. And yeah, if you're interested in scuba diving, you ever want to talk scuba diving, cave diving, tech diving, you know what those things are, hit me up, because that's my passion play for sure.
Jeremiah, thank you very much for this call. It was my pleasure to host you, and also looking forward to our next meeting.
Absolutely, Burak. And thanks to everybody out there. You can reach me if you'd like to via my blog, jeremiahgardner.com, or shoot me an email or whatever it is. I'm sure Burak will put all the relevant information, but I'd love to chat. I'm in a unique period of time right now where I have room and space. And so if you want to put some time on my calendar, I'd love to have a conversation.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Thanks, Burak.